Howdy doody everybody, and welcome to the demo of Tell a Demon. This is by the same people who did the game Asher, and this takes place approximately 6 months after Asher. Now this is only a demo, so I don't know how long it's going to be, and there might be, bugs or etc, etc. Okay, I'm just gonna, timed choices. Yeah, there's time choices too in Asher, which if you play the game for yourself, you're going to discover. I was like, oh crap, I wasn't expecting this. And yeah, play Asher and you'll see what I meant. Here you go. Do I want to play the tutorial? Yeah, sure, why the heck not, right? And Tell a Demon, you will see the story through several characters' perspectives. Neat. Sometimes you will be able to make a choice that will impact the viewpoint character's relationship with other characters, and sometimes a choice will affect the story later down the road. Tell a Demon has two modes. One mode has time choices and one mode does not. By default, time choices are on. They're usually like this. Pick something quick. Pick me. Okay. In addition to the choices with the count down bar, sometimes a time choice will prompt you to hit a keyboard key quickly, such as space. Not all choices in Tell a Demon are timed, and if you don't make a choice in time, something else will happen. Not choosing quickly enough is not always a bad thing, although it's not always a good thing either. So, do you want to enable time choices? Yeah, I'm going to keep them on. Makes things interesting and fun, and then I start to panic. So, keep in mind that you can always turn time choices off or on by assessing the settings in Quick Menu, which we already saw. Speaking of Quick Menu, it's located in the upper right hand corner of the screen. For certain actions, such as skip or auto, you need to hit the return button at the bottom of the menu to hide it after you made a selection. Quick keys stand for quick, K keys stand for quick keys, Q also stands for quick save, quick load, yeah. F, fast skip, etc. Anyway, I think that's all. If you need access to this tutorial again, click on help on the main menu. Once upon a time, there lived a farmer's daughter on the outskirts of a grand city. Every night, she looked upon the face of the moon and wished for an adventure. Despite such an unlucky wish, all might have ended well with her, except that she did not believe in demons. The Naturius family collected circa 1280 CE. Asher City State, Sunday, March 2nd of 1321. The Asher Post. Man failed for Scylla street slayings. The Emperor's Spirit. Demons in the city state of Asher. Friday, June 20th of 1321. The Daily Assyrian. Casson found guilty in Scylla street slayings. Aurora Prefecture. Scylla Street, Saturday, June 21st, 1321, 3 o'clock in the morning. Act 1, Strangers. I'm not sure how long the demo will be. I'm going to see and try and do the demo all in one sitting. The demon found the newspaper lying on its front in the gutter. He didn't know why at first. These days it took him several tries to read anything, even large type. But some part of him recognized the significance of the headline, so he picked it up. He struggled through the haze of hunger until he understood what it meant. He found it amused him. And these were his crimes, and his and those of the other shadow demons all pinned on someone else. A part of him that was the hunger thrilled at it, sending ripples through the mind chain that bound them all, and answering ripples from the others returned him to him. Glee and satisfaction and hunger. Always hunger. Not all the demons caught in mind chain responded, of course. Some of them had even less mind than he did. And the hunger curled within him, warning him of the approaching dawn and other dangers nearby. He bandaged in a street for a dark, quiet place. The dim mist... Oops. Oh, I hit my mouse wheel by accident. Oh, it rewinds. Cool. He abandoned the street for a dark, quiet place, the dimmest morning light nipping at his heels. 3:30. A woman stepped onto the street. She moved with the wariness of one turned to other senses. Darkness did not make for her steps cautious, nor did she shy from an occasional sound interrupting the quiet early morning. I know you're here, Marcus. Are you hiding from me? Calavel, my dear. Think that's enough flash and fire? You do know that someone could be watching. Should you not be hunting vermin, perhaps? I believe I saw a rat creeping around not so long ago. Been a little busy, evading reporters of all things this week. That wouldn't be your fault, would it? I've told you time and time again to be less conspicuous. That rambling book you call home. It's not that. A man arrived on my doorstep with a photograph of an old painting of me, claiming to have the original hidden away somewhere, intended to blackmail me. Begin a witch hunt if I didn't comply, I suppose. I don't know. Small blessing that so few people believe we exist. I dealt with him well enough, but I haven't been able to track down the painting. I was hoping you'd hid behind it, you being easier to find of the two things. Why do you think that would be my doing? Oh, perhaps because years ago you assured me that the dreadful painting was thrown on the fire with the rest of the records. Forgotten and gone and cast to wind, I believe your words were. And where are they? Quoted in the papers with a book and the works and the originals locked away in some tidy archive just outside my reach. And only last fall that disaster with Tetrine. I hope I'm pronouncing their names right. You should have changed her name years ago. Dispense with Calavel. She has been dead a long time, or faced the consequences. Not all things are my doing, my dear. You remember that there is another option, no? For the love of little house cats, I am not helping you restore the old empire. If you planted information about me in order to force my hand, nonsense. Of course not, because that would be breaking our bargain, wouldn't it, dear heart? Indeed. And just what are you doing here? It stinks of myrrh and cobwebs all along my street. I believe Antoine thinks it's his street. I'm not in breach of the bargain being here. Antoine can squat on that grubby old theater all he wants. Doesn't change that the street is mine. If you are... I'm not playing your game today. Answer me already. Why are you here? It is going to rain. Oh man, have the ears eaten away at your mind at last? No. You would interfere. Clearly. How about a little trip, my dear? Marcus! A scent rather like ozone clung to the air, only evidence that the barrier between worlds had been briefly fractured by the departure of the two demons. The brick barely had time to mend itself, however, before the man returned. Oh, clicked out the window. Marcus studied the street, then retreated to the shadows to delay his contact with the coming daylight. I apologize for the mouse coming on and off the screen. I'm just, I need to click. Dawn. 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to just do a little save here. We'll do a quick save. This must be the city center, Telturius thought as she turned a corner. Seeing it for the first time, she wondered if it was like peering back in time. Had the Empire looked much like this back in his heyday? But then, she supposed anything must be grand compared to the crumbling stone farms of her home in Kupra Prefecture. She glanced down at her little worn scrap of newspaper, carefully torn from the classified section. She read it again, for perhaps the 10th time. It was the right street. Ahead was Skilla Street Theater. This was it. How charming to work at a theater, she thought. I wonder if I'll ever meet anyone interesting. Then she scolded herself for counting chickens before the eggs had hatched. Too soon. And besides, the lady on the phone told me there were at least 2 other applicants. Then she felt... Actually, she wasn't sure how she felt. After a moment, she decided she was, a little homesick. She had thought of the rolling hills of her parents' farm and her childhood there, the remnants of ancient buildings she played among, the peeper frogs she'd catch with her sister at the creek, the long walks in autumn, and at that moment, when, looking up to see the changing colors in the leaves, she might find herself caught in the gaze of a deer instead. Then deer and girl would stand there, frozen, until the creature sprang to life, and in one blink and the next, it was gone. She felt a pang of longing at the memory. Even though the farm had changed since her childhood, it was still more home to her than the silent city. That was when Tao noticed the man on the other side of the street. First she took little notice of him, but then it became apparent that he was moving toward her. It was going to rain, I think. Sorry? There's something subtly off about him. Her eyes caught onto his cravat, or is it a cravat, and waistcoat, which were odd in themselves, and yet he wore the old-fashioned clothes as if they were familiar. Perhaps he worked at the theater. Or perhaps it was the time of year for costume parties. Or maybe he was from Oros. There were stories of costume harvest festivals taking place in some of the more traditional city-states. Aunt Livy often said that demons dressed in clothes from other times, but Tao dismissed this line of thought quickly. Demons did not exist. What a time for her aunt's worries and stories to be weaseling their way into her psyche again. Tao curbed her imagination with an effort and caught up with what he had said, not recalling any reports of rain in the paper. She began to think that his comment combined with his garb were signs that the wild imagination of hers might not entirely be off the mark. Okay. Oh, you think so? When you get to be my age, my dear, you come to know these things. His age? He didn't look quite that old, she thought. Well, there was the cravat and the long hair. Her gaze fell on his shirt, bright and the finest linen, she noticed, almost with envy. The summer storms do not last long. No, they do not. Where was it going? She found herself glancing longingly at the theater across the street. She wasn't late, not yet, but she wanted to ask the receptionist about the place and about Mr. Harris, the theater owner. It is a little assumed to assume it's safe, is it not? What? The papers. They only just caught the man who did it. And is this not the place where it was done? It was the first time it had occurred to her to be afraid. I don't know. So what is so important that a young lady like yourself is here at this hour? It's not that early. Excuse me, bye. I'm going to be late for an appointment. At the theater? Must be. Not much else on the street. Well, you needn't bother. I know the man. Was it not awful what happened to his last secretary? It's going to be a little much. I wasn't sure what to say. What had happened to his last secretary? What had happened to her? Tao decided not to argue that she was merely a typist who happened to be familiar with FM machines rather than a secretary. The woman on the phone had been very clear that Mr. Harris had already had a secretary. Why, she disappeared. They say it was a Scylla Saint killer, but the body wasn't found on the street like the others. Tao felt a twinge of dread. All of her aunt's warnings about the dangers of working in the city returned to her at once. Tried to stifle her worry. After all, Aunt Livy saw demons and everything. Said it was going to rain. Huh? And then it began. Even one of Ash's short summers would ruin her hair and her new dress before she even had the chance to cross the street, she realized in dismay. There's an overhang here. If you stand by that grating... Concerned for her clothes, Tao moved to stand where the man had indicated. To her relief, the stranger was right. It was dry. Tao turned back to thank him, but he was gone. Hey, kid! The voice seemed to be coming from next to her feet. From behind the grating? She wondered. This is going to be a little too much. Peculiar strangers on the street for one thing. People skulking behind rusted grates for quite another. Tao was about to make a dash across the street, dress or no, when she realized the mistake of looking down. Her curiosity gained the better of her common sense. Oh, there we go. Her last impression was of eyes that remind her of a rat's or a deer's. The whites were swallowed up by the iris, looking all dark and liquid and wrong in a human face. Too late to look away, Tal remembered what eyes like that meant. Demon. Tell a demon. Even dimmed by the clouds and the green rain, the light from the street burned his eyes. I should probably have said this first, but there's probably going to be spoilers from Asher in this demo. Just to warn you right now. He looked away, down into the soothing darkness from the catacombs. His prey lay in a heap on the floor, eyes closed, fingers clenched in bad dreams. Hello, Dinner. Sleep well. Nothing. She was still caught in the thrall of the demon's gaze. It hit some people like that. Others it left all too aware to the delight of the hunger. However, he had reached the end of his reservoir of phrases and could say no more. Aya would have had more to say, of course. She had an abundance of words, all ready to string into sentences. But she had left him to himself 3 days ago when a demon not of the mind chain had driven her away and his words had all dried up. Looked down at the kid again. She looked uncomfortable on the cold floor. Where he had dropped her she had stayed, limbs awkwardly arranged, eyes all glassy and staring. The ancient cement could not be a pleasant resting place for a living girl. Looking at her lying there, a human feeling began to creep up on him. He was ready to scamper off at the first sight of the demon within, but it was there nevertheless. He felt sorry for her. The hunger hissed and recoiled at the intrusion of the human emotion, scattering it into hiding. Hunger didn't speak in words, not exactly, but he felt its meaning tugging at him like a necktie pulled too tight. Our prey, we hunger. There was something about her. She was familiar in a way he couldn't place. Maybe it was her look. He had never been particularly aware of women's fashions, not before his death and not now. But even he knew there was something dated about the crop of her hair and the cut of her dress. If they got up like that, she could be from the country. You noticed the copper beads of her necktie, the tiny spiral designs placed on the surfaces. He recognized them all at once. They were folk designs, probably an heirloom piece. So she was from the country. He almost laughed. It had been a long time since he'd seen country jewelry. Some of the stuff was worth something. Xian gods, more than a few neckties like this girl's belonged to museums. But he usually looked for fatter fish to fry. He corrected himself. Having been dead for nearly half a year, it wasn't exactly been handling any almost illegal demon or imperial artifacts recently. Not that he thought of it. Hunting artifacts was what had got him killed. With that thought, the rest of his mind cleared out like mist in the sunshine. Memories brightened, Words lit up like fireflies, waiting to be caught up into sentences. His own name was like a half-forgotten ember, waiting for the breath that would kindle it to life. Julius. His name was Julius Ramsay. And he was dead. He wondered if there was a cure. After all, it had been a monster's poisoned blood that killed him. Then he decided that Dad was probably dead. That fact sank in that he had been a demon for the past, 6 months? Memories weren't finished with him, and his own death wasn't the worst of them. 100 deaths at his hands, at his teeth, bombarded him. Blood, feeding, suffering, and hunger. So many dead. And wasn't that all his doing? He came out on the other side, gasping in air. Being dead, did he not need air? It filled his lungs, rattling in demon sense of ears. Alien. Unneeded. No, not entirely. If he wanted to speak, he would need to breathe. He knew that. The newspaper headline from that morning came back to him. The demon had only understood it enough to gloat. Julius knew more than that. He and I had been seen on more than one occasion, sometimes Prey got away, leaving witnesses. With enough witnesses, and there was more than one, somebody had to point out that there was more than one killer. Some reporter had to talk about it. Somebody had to look at the newspapers from earlier in the year, back when the commissioner was warning people about a tall man accompanied by a woman, and the question changed in suspects. Maybe somebody already had. There's a large gap in his memory, especially from the hunger often prevented him thinking clearly. Yeah, no matter how Julius searched his memories, he found no illuminating headlines. So even if he had missed a headline, that still meant that either there had been a terrible error, or someone, or several someones, were making an effort to hide the shadow demon's crimes. His, Aya's, and those of any of the other mindless suckers trapped in the mind chain. Julius didn't believe in that kind of coincidence. No, he believed in the ineptness of the law with its unwavering faith of one who made his living exploiting it. But those were laws largely concerned with the handling and recovery of demon and imperial artifacts. When dead bodies were involved, the law was reasonably adept. Or so he thought. What bothered him the most was that the demon ruling his body had gotten away with murder. Those crimes could be his. After all, the hunger had been in charge when he committed them. Still, it was my hands that did it, he thought, tasting the blood from 100 phantom kills. He swallowed and tried not to think about how good it had tasted, how indescribably lifelike, when it should have been no better than sucking on pennies. Were those crimes his or the demon's? I don't know. I personally could see it both ways, you know. I'm gonna go with this one. It couldn't be. He couldn't control the hunger. That was when he realized the hunger was back, pressing at his mind, or urged him not to wait, but to kill the girl. The pull was so strong, the room seemed to tilt with it, and the hunger was there at the bottom, its maw yawning wide, waiting to welcome him, body and soul, into its blood belly. I think I should have said the other choice. Oh, I almost impressed things. Oh. Can't stop me. Part of you. With that one crystalline thought, the hunger was gone, leaving him to the silence of his own head. He didn't remember the last time his thoughts had been so quiet. But how? A fellow didn't just recover from being a demon. He was still dead. He could feel it like a curtain stillness and a kind of chill in his flesh, and yet he did not mind the cold. So he was still dead, except now he wasn't a mindless demon. He was a demon with a mind. Where did that leave him? For the sake of Cian gods, what good was a mind when the hunger was so damn strong? He felt an urge to toss his conscience, his mind, and his memories, to forget, to simply let his human self stay dead. There was another part of him that already had a hold and didn't want to let go. He didn't want to let go of his mind. He wanted his sanity and himself back. But either way, it hurt. It would be so much easier just to be the hunger, instinct, feeding, thirst, to know more than that. To know no more than that. The hunger sensed his weakness, and he felt it stir. No, he thought. He didn't want to give in, and he didn't want to kill her. He hadn't expected. He wanted to protect her. From what? Himself? Nothing else here was a danger to her. His lips curled in self-disgust. He couldn't even trust himself around her, much less someone else. Much less someone alive. What was he thinking? Protect her? He hoped that this sudden streak of chivalry was only a temporary effect of losing his mind. Tao did not snap to alertness, but struggled through dreams. I'm gonna do a little safety. Cool, damp air carried with it the scent of wet cement and overturned earth. Must have fallen asleep on the porch again, she thought. Tomorrow I'll go to the city to live with Aunt Livy, just like I told Mother I would. Then fear slid over her, dragging her into wakefulness with icy claws. Toph scrambled to her feet. She felt numb from the cold and the lingering effects of looking a demon in the eyes. She was underground. She could feel it. It's a cool, damp quality to the air, just like in her dream. When she saw the grating, she recognized it at once. Tao was in the catacombs beneath Scylla Street, and before her stood a demon. Her heart raced, but the demon made no motion toward her. She closed her eyes tight. Should she scream for help? Would anyone hear her on an empty street beyond the grate? Somehow, she thought of screaming to a lonely street would only seem worse than not screaming at all. Wait. Something in the way he said that single word stopped her. You're a demon. Must be my complexion that gave it away. It felt unreal. It was as if she'd been thrown into one of her aunt's stories. But demons did not exist. You made me late for my appointment. Nothing like paralyzing fear to make her state the obvious. If she was any more terrified, she might start babbling about the weather. A lot of people who come across me don't meet their appointments at all. That wasn't a threat. Somehow, Tao didn't think that reassuring people was a strong point, and yet, somehow, the statement was reassuring. It took her another moment to realize why. He spoke slowly and sounded uncertain. Something about an uncertain demon was a little less frightening. Tao told herself to calm down. If one could get a demon to talk, there was hope. Once you got one talking, her aunt always said, then you could get a chance of getting the better of it. It was when they were simply hungry that was the end of you. Or when they had black eyes. That meant they were the children of the Empress's shadow. You couldn't help those. Although concerned about looking the demon in the eyes again, a quick glance at his face told her that he was, indeed, a shadow's child. And you know what? I think I might end this demo there. If you want, I can always... you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do the same thing I did with Asher. This game is free to download, and it said it was a demo. But it seems like it's actually quite a long one. If not almost complete. I'm not sure how complete it is. So if you want to try the demo out for yourself, the link will be down in the description below. And when this game is up and completely ready, I'm sure there's going to be multiple endings like in Asher.